The Oppo Reno line is one that has undergone many evolutions over the years. It went from introducing certain innovative features to becoming a great example of what a mid-range phone can be. So maybe it's appropriate that this phone is just about as colorful as its past. So let's dive in. This is Joshua Vergara. What's going on, everybody? Here are my thoughts on the Oppo Reno5 Pro. Now before we get started, I just want to thank you for hanging out with me again in this video. Don't forget to be a part of the discussion in the comments section. Tell me what you think about this phone and hit that like button so we can all share the love. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so you know when I release videos and we can kick it again. Oppo usually puts in the good work towards good design, and I have to say that after the Reno 4 Pro felt a little ho-hum, this Reno 5 Pro is one of the best looking and feeling phones that I've used recently. Oppo does not overdo it on the size of the phone after all. This is a 6.55-inch display. It's just right for everyday handling without sacrificing a whole lot when it comes to screen enjoyment. A slight curve on the front mirrors the curve on the backing, but then you notice how both sides meet a really thin frame in the middle. I'm constantly impressed by how thin this device is, considering the kind of performance you can get on it. Even with the included clear case, it's not that thick at all, but I don't even have that on right now because I do want this phone to shine. But then the Reno 5 Pro gets a ton of points for style because the colorway is so nice. A matted backing reflects light in a myriad of colors, a little bit like an oil slick that gives this phone a new look at any angle. There's very little to cut into this eye-catching backing as well. The camera hump in the corner nestles 4 sensors, while the Oppo logo is in the opposite corner blending in just right. These little details show off the amount of attention Oppo seems to have paid this device. For example, the top of the phone even has a panel that is equally color reflective and says, "Designed for Reno." This makes me think that Oppo is treating the Reno line like its own little brand, its own little sub-brand, and with looks like this that really make it stand out, I'm all for it. The display is a Full HD Plus OLED panel that is really pleasing to view due to the colors, and then it's great to handle because of the 90Hz refresh rate. Everything from text reading to media consumption is done well on this screen, and since it is an OLED panel, extra features like a highly customizable always-on display are available. The fingerprint reader is also in display, and like I said, that ensures that the backing is clean and can continue to show off that color. There are some things that had to be dialed back in order to achieve this minimized body size. There is no headphone jack, and the SIM tray does not accommodate a microSD card for expandable storage. That said, there are some worthwhile bells and whistles. You have the 8 or 12 gigabytes of RAM, I just showed off the in-display fingerprint reader, there's also a really fast face unlock, and all of this makes sure that the phone still has some of the high-end flagship amenities that warrant using the term Pro. Now the included SoC is one that might raise an eyebrow. What you get here is the MediaTek Dimensity 1000 Plus. Usually Oppo's no stranger to using MediaTek processors in their phones, but often it's for like the mid-range chips so that they can make affordable offerings. But here the Dimensity 1000 Plus is a high-end chip from MediaTek, one that is more than capable to bring speedy and reliable everyday performance. Sure, it's a bit more measured compared to the top-of-the-line Qualcomm Snapdragon processors, but even MediaTek themselves says that their high-end chip is made for bringing that affordable flagship quality. I had no issues getting through a typical daily routine at all, including social media applications, some gaming, camera work, and plenty of time spent at home in the ColorOS interface. Sure, you might have to dial back settings in intensive video games like Genshin Impact or Call of Duty Mobile, but it was never to the point where I was unhappy with the experience. Rest assured that with the Dimensity 1000 Plus, you're in good hands with the Reno 5 Pro, including even 5G for future proofing. Now there is another aspect that I have to call out as being extra premium, not just the fact that this thin phone manages to pack in a 4350 mAh battery, but also that it is VOOC Charging 2.0 capable. The battery life on the phone is pretty standard, with screen on time hitting around 4 or 5 hours on a particularly heavy day that did include camera usage. But even before I got in front of this camera to film this video, I needed to charge up this phone because it was sitting at 5%. And VOOC is one of the only charging standards that I can actually watch going up in percentages quickly. It's always fun to watch it go. That 65-watt charging got me up and running really quickly, and now here we are in the video. So we go into this knowing that the Reno line is meant to be like the affordable flagship considered below the top tier siblings like the Find X2 Pro, so it shouldn't be a surprise that the camera package is where you'll see some compromises as well. The Dimensity 1000 Plus simply doesn't support having those crazy camera sensors, but Oppo makes sure to max it out as much as possible with some high megapixel sensors on the front and the back. Now a 32 megapixel front-facing camera sounds pretty impressive, and the pictures can come out quite nice. But like many front-facing cameras on these Chinese phones, you end up having really soft results. Sometimes it gets blown out really easily. Like even with the sun bearing down on me right now, in this 1080p recording, you can see that the colors are going all over the place. The dynamic range could definitely use a boost. The cornerstone sensor on the rear is a 64 megapixel shooter, which is a good performer in both photos and videos. You can get a full resolution photo pretty easily, but the pixel binning helps in getting great final results in most lighting scenarios. For the most part, users will want to keep their shooting to the main sensor because the backup shooters have much less power. Not to mention, this camera also has a couple of fun extra modes like AI color portrait in video. The 8 megapixel ultra-wide shooter is lacking in dynamic range and introduces a little too much distortion in the edges, but at least it can shoot 4K video, which can't be said for the front shooter that has 4 times the megapixel count. There's a depth sensor that is included for portrait shots, and then there's a macro lens here if you do want to get really close to a subject, but honestly hitting that digital zoom already does a pretty good job already. There is a lovely dual view mode in which the angle of the focal length of the front-facing camera is actually perfect for like these little vlog type shots if you want to go half and half on the front and the rear cameras. I quite like it like this. The thing is, the resulting video is always going to be at 1080p. So if you just look at the raw numbers, it's easy to say that the camera experience feels a little uneven. I personally would have done away with those smaller sensors and put in a little bit more attention on the ultra-wide, for example. But at least the main sensor does a really good job of carrying the entire experience. And finally, this entire experience is held together with what might be the best version of ColorOS yet. Based on Android 11, ColorOS 11.1 brings a really easy to understand interface to all of the features that Oppo has been bringing to their smartphones for some time now. There are a ton of things that you can do with the operating system, especially in terms of customization. I already mentioned the always-on display, which gives you this option to put the colorful text sideways in landscape mode, which gives it a pretty unique look. And then of course there's the powerful theme engine, so you can really customize the rest of the interface. There are extras like the game space and gestures like the 3-finger screenshot that add further convenience layers. But I will admit that they are a bit buried under a ton of extra bloatware. I mean, just a quick scroll through the app drawer shows a lot of different applications you might not ever use. Not to mention, there are even a couple of folders right in the middle that are practically ads for more apps and games that I won't ever touch. This level of bloatware might vary based on your region, but most users are just not keen to seeing much of it at all. All of that said though, I am still a fan of ColorOS in general, especially now, because I remember when this OS was one of the most convoluted interfaces in all of Android, and now there's a push to make it a bit easier to fathom. As a matter of fact, if you're curious about what else ColorOS has to offer, I actually have a video just going through the various features that you can watch in the card appearing above or linked in the description below. Maybe the Oppo Reno line is hitting a bit of a crossroads. I wasn't particularly jazzed about the last generation, but it was clear to me that Oppo is using the name of Reno as a mass market pull. It's a phone that isn't priced super high, but they'll optimize it as much as possible to still provide as best an experience that the specs can give. And in the Reno5 Pro, it seems they found a good mixture of those bits and pieces. I mean, a lower resolution screen still has 90Hz refresh rate in this OLED panel, VOOC charging elevates a decently sized battery, and a good main camera sensor almost makes up for those shoddy secondary lenses. And finally, the MediaTek Dimensity 1000 Plus gets tuned right for this version of ColorOS 11. The balancing act is simply real in the Reno5 Pro, and for a price that comes in under $500 US equivalent, this global release might be a great option for people looking for a flagship but don't want or need to break the bank for phones that simply try too hard. All in all, kudos to Oppo for continuing to make the Reno line relevant and noteworthy, especially one that is as eye-catching as this. The Oppo Reno5 Pro was just announced and is going to be made available globally, so let me know in the comments if you plan on scooping one up. I'm still impressed with how well this phone performs, considering it's one of the thinnest that I've handled in months, and of course, it's got great looks, inside and out. If you liked my review on this phone, make sure you hit that like button, and stick around for more by subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. But with all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and call it on this one. Thank you so much for watching, please take care of yourselves and each other, and enjoy your tea everybody. I better go get some.